Really, really good.
Yeah.
Really good.
Uh-huh. Silence, please.
Punctuation marks are rather like the road signs along the language road. For example, they help us to know when we should pause, slow down, stop completely, exclaim, show possession, show omission, and all sorts of other functions that would help us be able to drive safely along our language route. Let's have a look at some of the sentences which clearly show how important punctuation can be. This sentence can have two very different meanings depending on how it has been punctuated. Mandla said, "Joy is creepy." Let's add some boyish punctuation. Mandla said Joy is creepy. In this sentence, Joy is declaring that Mandla is creepy. Let's alter the perception of this sentence. Mandla said, "Joy is creepy." Whether or not the creep is Mandla depends entirely on how the sentence has been punctuated. This sentence has already proven that punctuation does matter. This might be the Mixit or Facebook giant-thumbed generation. Often these new media operate without much punctuation at all, but the problem is that then meaning and tone become something of a mystery and misunderstandings will be common. It might not matter that the grocery store has tomatoes to you, but it does matter when you are the one being labeled as creep. Many punctuation marks function to cause a pause of some sort. The first one we're going to have a look at is the full stop. For example, even the reckless taxi driver came to a halt at the stop street. Full stops are also used to indicate abbreviations. We don't tend to put them after words like Mr. or Doctor. DR doesn't have a full stop after it. But in the case of an abbreviation like Prof, we would put a full stop because the end of the word has not been included. That last letter R has not been included in the abbreviated version of the word prof. An interesting thing to note is that the frequency of the full stops in a passage can have a dramatic impact. For example, if you want to build up suspense, you can have lots of very short sentences. He dribbled the ball, he was closing in, the goalie perspired, the ball was getting closer, danger, his skill was undoubted, the goalie shuffled, the striker took aim. Longer, more discursive sentences require fewer full stops. The effect is gentler and slower and can enhance descriptive detail. Be careful though, too many long sentences can become exhausting to read, and that can mean that your reader loses track of what your essential message is. Here is an example of a longer, more descriptive sentence. The majesty of the Drakensberg mountain range was certainly undoubted. The powerful mountain peaks stretched to the very heavens themselves. The silvery undulating river caressed the gentle hills and could be observed for quite a distance, shimmering in the lush greenery, bringing peace to the lands. Often, punctuation marks can clarify meaning. You don't want to be in a situation like this one. Let's look at how commas function in a sentence. Think of them as a yield sign rather than a full stop. Commas create a slight pause in the sentence. Here is an example. The bus lurched forwards but hesitated because it had come to a rather troublesome traffic circle. Commas can also separate items in a list. For example, on our roads you will find taxis, buses, cars, trucks, and danger. Be careful that you don't use a comma when the sentence is finished. This is called a comma splice, and it should be avoided. For example, this is called a splice. It should be avoided. These are actually independent sentences, so instead, rather use a full stop, conjunction, or semicolon. An exclamation mark also indicates a pause, but it is usually a much more dramatic one. For example, after the sentence, "I earned a distinction for English," you could have an exclamation mark, or you would have one after an interjection, like "ouch." A question mark also indicates a pause, but it is usually at the end of a statement which is a question, or a statement which conveys an element of doubt. For example, did that grumpy old man really kick the exclamation mark? Kicking a punctuation mark? Surely that can't be right. He should rather kick a soccer ball. A dash is a sort of comma on steroids. It indicates, wait for it, that something dramatic is sure to follow. Sometimes a dash can introduce something all on its own, and on other occasions, dashes can travel in pairs. When they are in pairs, they function the same way as brackets or parentheses. The semicolon is a sadly misunderstood punctuation mark. What a pity! It can create meaningful pauses. It empowers you.
Hi, I'm a semicolon. Not many people know how to use me correctly, and this is quite sad, as I am actually quite useful. I can be used to separate related independent clauses where conjunction is absent, like, I went to the basketball court. I was told it was closed for cleaning. Separate independent clauses linked with a transitional phrase or conjunctive verb, like, everyone knows he's guilty of committing the crime. Of course, it will never be proven. Separate items in a list that contains internal punctuations. For example, she saw 3 men. Mandla, who came from Soweto, Tom, the pastor's son, and Gavin, the soccer player. Other interesting uses of a semicolon are, in computer programming, the semicolon is used to separate multiple statements in programming language. In mathematics, the semicolon can be used to separate variables.
Double trouble. Let's look at parentheses. Some punctuation marks indicate that certain information within a sentence has been set aside. Sometimes, as in this case, it is non-essential information. Other times, and you may find this difficult to believe, the punctuation encloses words that are a bit like stage directions. Finally, and few students remember this, they may be used for the purpose of parentheses. Double dashes, double commas, and brackets can all perform these functions. A colon is a bit different because its primary function is to introduce. It can introduce direct speech. For example, as the wise student said, the learning channel rocks. It can also introduce a list of items. For example, in English, you need to know how to spell, punctuate, edit, and speak correctly. Ellipsis dots usually travel in threes. They can indicate that someone's thoughts are trailing off. Fatigue is setting in. Can't focus. Must rest. They can also indicate that part of a quotation has been omitted. For example, in the famous soliloquy from Hamlet, to be or not to be, there's a really long speech. You might start with the words to be or not to be, and then have your ellipsis dots, followed by the words are. There's the rub. The ellipsis dots indicate that a substantial part of the original quotation has been omitted. Inverted commas indicate that words have been spoken or quoted. For example, Shane said, the audition process is open to anyone. Or, in the words of the classics, lights, camera, and action. Sometimes inverted commas can be used to indicate that a person is not being sincere in what they say. If you're familiar with the television program The Weakest Link, the mean quizmaster might say, that answer was certainly strong, and if you wrote strong in inverted commas, that would indicate her ironic tone. We can also use inverted commas to indicate the titles of books, plays, films, and songs. For example, I read The Times today, but decided I preferred to listen to Alpert's recording of Rise, while perusing some poetry of Keats. I might just go to the movies tonight and watch Bright Star. The apostrophe is probably the most abused punctuation mark ever. In fact, it has only two main functions. One is to show possession, if something belongs to someone, and the other is to show contraction, if you have omitted or left out certain words or letters. You can find amazing examples on many funky websites. Punctuation marks help us to navigate our way through texts. They are like the road signs indicating the way that we should read and speak. Punctuation marks will show us how to stop, pause, introduce, show possession, omission, a quotation, a question, or end your sentence completely.
Really, really good. Really, really good.
Silence, please.